So here's the thing. If it wasn't clear enough in my last video about the Heated Rivalry TV series, I absolutely loved the whole thing. And I will be continuing my campaign to audition for Harris in the next season, so if Jenny or Sarah or anyone else at casting is watching this, then you know where to find me. I can send you my acting resume. But we would be leaving out a pretty big piece of the puzzle if we left out the fact that this show is based on a series of books. And as we've come to know, they are incredibly popular and honestly, pretty dang good. Today, I'm going to go over my brief thoughts on all 6 of the Game Changers books that are currently published and put them into their own little ranking. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree, but at least we're all on the same page when we say that we are grateful that these exist. At the end of the day, whether or not I put your favorite as my number 1 or my number 6 does not change that fact. It's just my opinion, and that's okay. Before I jump into the books individually, I want to go over some things about the series as a whole. Game Changers, as some of you let me know in my Heated Rivalry video, is basically romance royalty. It's got the emotions, it's got the smut, it's got the marketable premise, it's got everything. There isn't a single thing I can say in this video that will affect the reputation of this series, even if I was trying to. And I'm not the only one in my life to say this, but reading each of these books was so enjoyable that it broke me out of a reading slump and sparked up an interest in the romance genre. So if you're here to hear me shit on this series, then you'll probably be disappointed. However, members of my family have been reading romance for years, and when I tried to get into some of the books they were reading, it just didn't click. Granted, these were mostly historical romances, which I think has its own special brand of tropes, but maybe also just the books in general that they were reading tended to skew a little bit more on the violent side of passion. Lots of people being compromised, forced betrothals, and so on. In the Game Changers books, even when characters dislike each other or disagree, the passion is much less violent than I was expecting, coming in with this misguided understanding of the genre. I'll admit it, I had dismissed romance books as being not for me when I should have been looking for a type of romance that I was more interested in. And lo and behold, this series was it. Of the 5 main couples in the series, I can safely say that I love every single one. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I love 4 of them, and I like the other one, but we'll get into that in a minute. If we put aside my thoughts on the characters and the plots of each book, we are left with Rachel Reid's writing. And I don't want to come across as someone who's just glazing the popular thing, but the writing is really solid. It can be different for people who don't read romance, but it has real charm, great dialogue, and enough characterization to get invested without over-describing every single thought and emotion. If you choose to dig deeper and read into the characters, there's a lot of depth that you can discover. But if you prefer surface level as a vehicle to smut, then you can still get enjoyment out of these. It walks a perfect line and it leads to rereadability as well. If you read it in depth one time, you can do a surface level read another time, or if you're revisiting after a while without reading them, you can go in depth and find new things you didn't consider. And I think that's great. As for the layout of the timeline of the series go, some of these stories overlap a little bit, so you also get the added benefit of getting another perspective on some of the major moments. So this video will remain spoiler free since I'm only going to be giving a brief blurb of each book, but for both Heated Rivalry and The Long Game, you get major moments in the series from Ilya and Shane's perspectives, whereas they're presented from the perspectives of different main characters in other books first. It's a nice touch, and if you remember that these parts are coming up in the timeline, it makes the dramatic irony so much more sickening. Alright, enough stalling, let's get into my thoughts on each of these books, starting with the one I like the least. I really think I should preface this section by reiterating my earlier point. I don't think any of these books are bad, but Common Goal is the one of the series that I like the least. Common Goal follows Eric Bennett, an older hockey goalie who's pretty recently out of a marriage, and Kyle Swift, a bartender living in New York. For fans of the show, we meet Kyle a few times since he's in a close friend group with Kip. The top tropes we see in this story are age gap romance, sexual discovery, and asexual mentorship, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. I think my rating for this book has a lot less to do with the book itself and more just how I felt while reading it. I liked Eric, especially since goalies have this reputation for being pretty crazy, and he's very established in his own life. But I liked Kyle a little less. Yeah, we'll go with that. I thought Kyle was fine in his other appearances, but I just did not vibe with him this time around. The banter that the two have is great, but I don't really love the sexual exploration and mentorship thing they had going on. It felt at times like they were just meeting up to check boxes of gay sex positions, even if the stuff outside of the bedroom was progressing a little here and there. That couple I was talking about earlier, yeah, this is them. Maybe if they appeared more if they weren't in the 4th book, right before one of the other better couples and another Holinov book, then they might have stood more of a chance. But as it is, this one is the bottom of my list. I think I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. The fifth spot on my ranking goes to Tough Guy. I think that most people usually rank this one as their sixth place, but I think I disagree. Tough Guy follows Ryan Price, a giant and angsty hockey player who is becoming tired of his role as a brute on the ice, and Fabian Sala, who is a more effeminate musician whose family used to house hockey players and has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. It's very much opposites attract, and if you're into that, it's a great one too. I like Ryan and Fabian together, especially in the Game Changers series where we see lots of examples of hypermasculinity. Fabian on his own is really refreshing. If you'll forgive me a moment, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent. A friend of mine told me once that she was more interested in romance than straight romances because the characters didn't have to deal with the gender dynamics as a barrier in their relationship, and that meant she had an equal opportunity to relate to and project herself onto either person in the relationship. Obviously, there are lots of reasons why people are drawn to romance, and maybe this is one of them, but when she explained that to me why she hated this book, I could see some parallels there to her explanation. Fabian is unquestionably feminine, wearing makeup and jewelry, and the fact that it's a little easier to put Fabian in a feminine role meant that she was being pushed into relating and empathizing for Fabian and less so for Ryan. Am I saying that this is exactly what happens to everyone? No, not even a little bit. And I'm not saying that this is a 100% no questions asked interpretation of why she didn't like it, but I think it's worth mentioning because if you're going into this series expecting big buff hockey men to be in love with each other, then you need to manage your expectations a little bit. Anyways, I liked it enough, but the 4 remaining books had things about them that bumped them higher up on the list for me. I've already talked a bunch about Fabian, but Ryan is pretty great too. He's more internal and angsty than some of the others in the series, especially up to this point if you're going in order of publication, and struggles with what he feels and believes and the way that people perceive him as a brute on the ice, which is a solid setup for drama, especially when characters like Fabian have their own ideas of how hockey players are going to react and behave. All in all, not bad, but not my favorite. I'd give this one a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. Next up is the number 4 spot, the one that started it all. You might be surprised to see it in this spot, but what can I say? I just like the others more. Game Changer follows Scott Hunter, a well-seasoned hockey player who's going through a bit of a slump, and Kip Grady, who is an aspiring grad student and current barista at a smoothie bar. If you've seen the show, which I'm sure most of you have, you know the drill. There isn't a whole lot to say about this book that hasn't been said before, but it's iconic and important for a reason. Just looking at the title, this one is majorly important to this series as a whole. It's part of why I'm a real supporter of reading the series in order, even if your love for the show makes you want to start with Heated Rivalry. If you think you'll be interested in all 6, you should start at the beginning and experience them in the order they were published. I just think that's the best way to take it all in. I've said it before, but I like Scott and I like Kip. I like them the most in their own book, and of course they have the most to do here, so there isn't a lot to complain about. If I sat here and nitpicked the timeline of their relationship, then I'd be lying because I don't think it's that big of a deal. They fall hard and they fall fast, so if you prefer a slow burn, then just wait until you continue on in the series. I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. It's super important to all the rest of the series, and even on its own, it's pretty enjoyable. Before you get out the pitchforks, let me explain. For those of you who watched my excessively long Heated Rivalry review, you'll know that I absolutely love both Ilya and Shane, but as far as the books go, it still doesn't take the top spot. Heated Rivalry, as I'm sure you're all well aware, follows Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov, who are hockey players on rival teams. If you don't care about spoilers and you're interested in knowing what happens in the books, you might as well watch that Heated Rivalry video I made since it breaks down the plot of the show pretty in-depth and it's a very faithful adaptation. The only part we didn't get is the very end, and I'm sure all those details will be clear in the second season. As far as the book goes, I have mostly the same thoughts. It's not absolutely perfect since I think the time jumps can get mildly annoying at first, even if they contribute to the tension and the slow burn, but as far as the lead characters of the books go, there isn't really any doubt that Shane and Ilya are the strongest. I love them. Still, I'll hold off all my thoughts about them because they are the leads in another book, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't talked about that one yet. Wonder why. Overall, I'll give the book version of Heated Rivalry a 9 out of 10. The number 2 Game Changers book, in my opinion, is Role Model. It kind of spoils what the number 1 is going to be, but let's be real, we all knew which one it was going to be anyway. Role Model follows Troy Barrett, who is a grumpy-ish hockey player freshly traded to a new city, and Harris Drover, who is a social media manager of the team that Troy is traded to. This book has the strongest grumpy sunshine dynamic of the series, and tackles some controversies in the hockey community very directly. I'll take a moment to get all of my begging out of the way and talk about Harris first. Aside from looking like me and a few other details that I think we have in common, Harris is a real ball of sunshine. If I'm able to land an acting agent, you bet your ass I'll be doing everything I can to get myself in the room for this audition, but nobody likes a beggar, so I promise this video is the last time you'll hear me talk about it. At least on here. As far as Troy is concerned, he's a great contrast to Harris. I think the thing that works for me the best in this book is how well Troy and Harris's narrations are contrasted. Of course, they have their drama, but each of them has such a unique perspective on the situation, and you get to see both. It's like that in all the books, but the two in this have the biggest difference in personality, and it's nice to see how their habits rub off on each other. For fans of the show, I'm also about 99% positive that we'll be seeing this plot play out in the future, so I can't say the same for Tough Guy and Common Goal, since they're less directly related to Shane and Ilya, but Role Model happens alongside a lot of the long game, so I'm fairly positive it will be included. As far as the events of Role Model are concerned, I liked a lot of it. The dynamic relationship between Troy and Harris is great, and the appearances from characters from other books are super great too, and there's very little that I think doesn't work. It also digs the most into hockey culture and some of the drawbacks and controversies that surround the sport, which is the first time the series touches on anything like that that isn't directly related to LGBTQ players, so it's a nice step up in intensity for the plot. It's also why I think I like it so much. It has the most to say. If you go into this series with a bit of a chip on your shoulder about romance books like I kind of did, then this one will satisfy you. I think I'll give it a 9 out of 10 like Heated Rivalry, but it bumps it out of the number 2 spot because of my love for Harris. As I'm sure we were all expecting, The Long Game comes in number 1 in the series. Honestly, the only thing negative I have to say about this book is that it ends where it does. I wish there was more. We get more of Shane and Ilya's story, and this time without any of the will they, won't they, and it leads to higher stakes, more drama, and some of the most stressful events of the series from the point of view of our favorite characters. In my Heated Rivalry video, I mentioned that there was a point where I had to leave the house and put the book down, and it was this book. Again, no spoilers, but I'm sure anyone who has read this has an idea of which part I'm talking about. I almost threw my Kindle at the wall. As the series progressed, Rachel Reid really honed her writing craft, and the fact that this one came out last and features the strongest characters as the leads just makes it a real masterclass in romance. If the Game Changers series is romance royalty, then this book is the crown jewel. It's also got the most spicy scenes in the series, which is saying something because as you can see from this infographic, there is plenty in each of the books. There's so much to say about this book, about Shane and Ilya, and about the upcoming next book in the series that I could go on for hours. But at the risk of repeating myself, I'll finish off the rating with a solid 10 out of 10. It's really everything I could have asked for with the series, and I really can't wait to see how it plays out on the TV show. And so this is the full ranking of the books. All great, but some greater than others. Be sure to let me know in the comments below if my picks are different than yours, but remember that if I or anyone else has different opinions, then there is really no wrong answer. It's just my opinion. If you disagree, that's totally fine. And with the 7th Game Changers book, Unrivaled, coming this fall, we'll just have to see where it lands in the ranking. I'm sure I'll be obsessed. Now that we're near the end, I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for the response to the Heated Rivalry video, both here on YouTube and on other platforms. I've been mostly absent from social media, at least publicly, so maybe finding out that people enjoying it enough to share it or to share their thoughts on my joke about playing Harris really means a lot. I wasn't kidding when I said I've considered going back into acting and seeking out an agent. Maybe if you guys believe that I might be able to do it, then I should be able to believe it in myself. Moving forward, I've decided it probably makes sense for me to be more on social media, especially if I'm going to be talking about this stuff in my videos. So you can find me on all platforms at Belmont_Cole. Right now, I've started accounts on Instagram and Threads and TikTok. I'm on Twitter/X as well, but I'm not really a fan of that app, so I won't be super active there. Right now, I'm basically just gushing about Heated Rivalry on Threads, and I've been posting about some paintings I'm doing and a Heated Rivalry dance party I'll be going to in Ottawa next month. So if you want to gush with me, then I'd love that. Hell, maybe I'll see you there. Or feel free to pop over and leave me some ideas for things to cover in the future. It's been great interacting with the community so far, and I'm looking forward to it. Until next time.